What's going on, Falcon fan? It's Warkando coming back at you with another video. So today, guys, I'm going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons, and I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and everybody keep talking about it. It's not a secret. What the Falcons' big issue is, and what has been their issue for probably like the last 3 decades, maybe, or more. And of course, that's the Atlanta Falcons can't get a pass rush, right? And we're gonna talk about you know what about the pass rush that over the NFL, the history of it. We're gonna talk about Atlanta Falcons um history of how their pass rush has been anemic for all those years. Um and we're definitely gonna talk about that. I just want to get you guys' opinion. And can the Falcons finally figure out a way to fix their pass rush? Right? Um, it's just so weird to think about how many years it has been, and Atlanta Falcons have never had a guy that rushing the passer that we're going to say be all pro or going to be in the Hall of Fame. Not one, right? We're going to definitely talk about that. Um, so guys, with that being said, if you have not already, let's go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Please hit that notification bell so you don't not drop another video. Please hit the like button, so I know you guys are here to talk about. Then please share my video throughout the YouTube universe so more people can come here to talk about. That's right, these Atlanta Falcons. All right, so first topic, we're going to get some administrative stuff out the way, and that is the NFL Combine. So the Combine, the interview, some of the players got there. I think the quarterbacks got there today. Some players got there. They're coming in. Teams probably already at the Combine. But tomorrow we get to hear from head coach Raheem Morris and general manager Terry Fontano. It's going to be really interesting to see what those guys got to say. You know, their closing arguments for closing out 2024 season, they talked about not having words about their actions, right? So it's going to start here at the combine. We definitely want to see their insight. Talking about this cap situation. It's good NFL. We talked about it on the last show where the NFL actually put the cap situation out there. So the Atlanta Falcons a little bit better shape than they probably had thought coming in before last week news. But they still got to make some decisions. So we want to hear about that. Guys, Grady Jarrett, Kyle Pitts, David Onyata, Young Way Cool, guys like that. Guys they might be thinking about bringing back in the free agency as well. Of course, they're not going to tip their hand. They're really tight on, transaction moves like that. So we like that. But of course, the biggest one is going to be about Kirk Cousins, right? So we definitely want to hear about what they say about Kirk Cousins. Also, this is an opportunity for General Manager Terry Fontenot to get with all the other teams. All teams are going to be representative there, so it's when you can try to start laying the groundwork. If they're going to be a potential trade for Kirk Cousins or even maybe Kyle Pitts, we'll have to see how that lay out. This we won't hear anything, but they can start kind of laying the groundwork for that. The new league year is coming up here on March 12th, so about a couple of weeks away. The tampering period started March 10th, so we're going to start hearing some things, starting to rumbling around there. So we know the franchise tag already been designated for the teams can actually start franchising tagging people. Falcons didn't have that; those people that had the franchise tag, so they won't fall in that category. But it is some free agents out there that will. That you never know the Falcon can actually start to maybe target, right? We heard about some big name guys being released. Guys like the Bosa out of the Chargers. Heard about Khalil Mack is going to be released, right? So we're going to see some potential, veterans that can get released. Maybe they out be priced for the Atlanta Falcons, but you never know. We just have to see about that. So, guys, that's the combine. Definitely going to be interested in it to see what those guys got to say. I'll definitely be back on here tomorrow to talk about their comments and what we heard from those guys. And I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts and comments as well of what we heard from our head coach and our general manager. So let's get into the topic of the day, right? So the biggest issue for the Atlanta Falcons, and I don't think it's a secret, guys. It's the pass rush. It's just that simple. The biggest issue is the pass rush. We can try to sugarcoat it all we want, but at the end of the day, the Atlanta Falcons have not had a decent pass rush um, for the last 15 to 20 years. It's just really that simple. They had a flash in maybe 2015 when Big Beasley had a good turnout. They showed flashes this year at towards the end of the season, but the Atlanta Falcon pass rush has just been non-existent, and it's sad because when we start to think about the Atlanta Falcons, you start to think about that's what they can't get right. They just cannot get the pass rush right. You go look at other positions that they have had here. Skill positions, Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, running backs. They had really good running backs. They had running backs that that hit 1,000 yards, really productive. They had dynamic duos a couple of times. You remember, Dunn and Duckett. You remember Michael Turner. You remember Coleman and Freeman, right? Now we got Algier and Bijan. They can get the running backs right. Receivers, we had Muhammad Sanu. Calvin Ridley. He had success with here. Like I said, Julio Jones. Um, Offensive linemen. We had some great offensive linemen here, and some of those guys wasn't even high draft picks, but they was really successful. Um, Defensive backs. We have really great defensive backs, right? We had solid linebacker play. But for some reason, the Atlanta Falcons cannot fix that front line, that pass rush, and until they do, that's going to be the issue. I mean, if you look at what happened to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowls, matter of fact, if you look at Patrick Mahomes' 2 losses in the Super Bowl, the biggest issue he had that he didn't have time to do his thing, right? And we know how good Patrick Mahomes is, but the Atlanta Falcons was, I mean, the other teams was able to neutralize Patrick Mahomes because of their pass rush, right? That Tampa Super Bowl that he was in, he was running for his life the whole time. You know, the Eagles game this past Super Bowl, they didn't even blitz, and they was able to put pass pressure on the quarterback. And you can neutralize a great quarterback if you got pass rush. That's the issue for our Atlanta Falcons. Until they figure this out, it's always going to be an issue, and it's sad because you would think, through all this time, the Atlanta Falcons would definitely be done figured out. But this is the age of the quarterback, right? Back in the days when you looked at teams, some teams was real run heavy. They went a lot of 12 personnel, then passed the ball around. You only had a couple teams that used to run the shoot. I mean, we had June Jones here, with the run the shoot offense and things like that. What's going on? What's going on, James? James said another issue is our linebackers too slow. I agree. But I think the biggest issue is the pass rush, and linebackers fall into that as well. Because if you do simulated pressures and things like that, the linebackers will fall into that. But you know, this is the era of the quarterbacks, and right now we know the importance of any franchise. You know, in this league, they need to have a franchise quarterback. If they don't, they're probably not going to be able to get succeed in where the things they want to do, right? Which means you got to have somebody on the other side to be able to put pressure on those franchise quarterbacks, right? You look at what the Washington Commanders was able to do, right? Team that was not really that good in 2023. They get a franchise quarterback, and then you see the lengths he was able to take those guys, right? That's what I'm talking about. To quarterback. So this is the era of the quarterback, which means you got to be able to have, pass rush to be able to get after the quarterback, and that's just not what the Atlanta Falcons been able to do for, like I said, almost 3 decades. It's and we about to go down this list, guys, and I want you to listen and see how bad the Atlanta Falcons have been over the years of trying to get pass rush here. And at some point, right, it don't matter who the general manager was, it doesn't matter who the coach was. The The Atlanta Falcons have not been able to figure this thing out, and hopefully, eventually, they start to do that, and hopefully they can start this year in 2025, right? So that's where we're at, guys. That's for me. I want to talk about this topic for a while, because you look around the league and everybody say you build from the trenches, right? The trenches. Yes, that's 100% true. But in a quarterback era, you want to be able to get to the quarterback, right? And if you can't do that, um, that's the some of the things that's really hindering this Atlanta Falcons team, right? You look at some of the best teams that's out there. They got all pro, people on the other side of the ball able to get after the quarterback, and it's not even sugarcoating. You just see it, right? Um, and then you see up and coming teams like I talked about the Los Angeles Rams. That front seven they got is dynamic the way they have to get up the ball. Talked about the Eagles, didn't even have to blitz and they was able to get after the quarterback. I mean, at some point in time, the Atlanta Falcons need to take the gloves off and stop trying to put band-aids on the issue and let's go for it and make sure they can get it done. And once they do that, then I think we all will be satisfied with what we get out this Atlanta Falcon team. So, guys, with that being said, let's talk about the history of the pass rush in the NFL, right? So, you know, one thing about this, one thing about the pass rush, and it was years before they actually started to add the sack in, right? So when you think about the sack, that's great, right? You like sacks. I know everybody want to talk about sack numbers. Sack numbers lead to pass rush. I get it, right? But at the end of the day, when you're thinking about pass rush in general, right? You're thinking about getting the quarterback off his spot, right? Pressures. You want to be able to pressure the quarterback. That's what you want to do to Patrick Mahomes, right? He can't sit back there. He can't dissect the offense. Right. He can read the defense and he can see where he want to go with the ball. But if he don't have time to be able to deliver the ball, he can make mistakes. Patrick Mahomes threw 2 interceptions. You know why? Because he got off his spot. He got rushed. He got hurried. Right. And he was trying to make a play. That's what happens when you're dynamic like that. You want to make plays, right? Most quarterbacks that can create outside the pocket, that's when they create a lot of they start to generate most of their errors because they want to make plays because they got off their spot, they start to get hurry and things like that, and pressures and hurries in the NFL is where that, right? You want to think about some guys over the years that solidify that, when you think about pass rush, these are some of the guys that you want to think about. You want to think about guys like a Deacon Jones, right? I know we're going back old school, right? Deacon Jones or Bruce Smith or Reggie White, Michael Strahan, TJ and JJ Watt, both of those guys, right? Mr. Sackman himself, Lawrence Taylor, who probably, I hear Shannon Sharp saying that he made two positions famous, right? The outside linebacker position and the left tackle position, because you had to find somebody to block Lawrence Taylor. So when you're thinking about things like that, right? Um, that's really, really, really something that you got to look at, right? Go into the modern day, you got Von Miller, you got Nick Bosa, you got Micah Parsons, you got all those guys that you see nowadays that's really, really productive. And because that's how you know that you got a good solid pass rush, right? Because those guys made names for themselves. That's what you see. You see guys that make names for themselves, and you like, man, if we could just get one of those guys, just one of them guys, right? The Atlanta Falcons have tried over the years, but they have not been able to get it done. And and if you think about this year, so when I'm looking at this year alone, right? And you look at the most guys, this edge rushers, guys, these edge rushers with the best pass rush win rate this year in 2025. It was Daniil Hunter, Trey Hendrickson, Michael Parsons, Brian Barnes, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, Will Anderson Jr., Dante Fowler, Max Crosby, Jonathan Greenyard, TJ Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, Jared Verse, Nick Bonito, Kayvon Thibodeau, Kyle Van Noy, Aaron Key, and Will McDonald. I did not call out one Falcon on that list. That's 20 guys. 20 guys I just called out, right? And I did not call out one Falcons, but those the rank from 1 to 20 with the best win rate, pass rush win rate this season alone, right? Go to the defensive tackles. Look at the defensive tackles. Defensive tackles, best pass rush win rate, Chris Jones, DeForest Buckner, Zach Allen, Leonard Williams, Quinn Williams, Milton Williams, Malik Collins, Vita Vea, Calais Campbell, Jeffrey Simmons, Ed Oliver, DeQuan Jones, Alec McNeil, Javon Kinlaw, Adam Butler, Zach Sowler, Morgan Fox, Keanu Benton, and Brandon Fisk. Didn't call out one Falcon. Right? That's 1 through 20 pass rush win rate for defensive tackles. So between the edge rushers and the defensive tackles, Atlanta Falcons, they have not one guy in the top 20. And we wonder why our pass rush is so anemic, right? So when we're looking at it over the years, right, you see guys like I mentioned, like a Bruce Smith, right, who over 100 some sacks, right? You look at Michael Strahan, look at a guy like Reggie White, right? We look at guys that had different body builds, so it's not guys that got to be built a certain way, right? It's guys that know how to get it done, right? And the Atlanta Falcons, for some reason, just not have been able to do that. They have not been able to get it done, and until we do, we're going to be talking about this, right? And you wonder why, and it's a secret, right? Because we keep going back to the draft, and the Falcons have not picked the pass rush in the draft, and maybe because they just can't get it right. Maybe they just can't get it right. We need to draft the trenches. Exactly. We need to bolster up our trenches. He said the last defensive coordinator played off in the secondary and limited the sacks. So he's saying they focus on pressure more. Now, the secondary and the pass rush, it does go hand in hand. But I can promise you, if you get a dog up front to be able to get out the passer, it'll fix some of the secondary issues as well. It just will, right? We just do not have none of those guys, right? So let's look at the Atlanta Falcons' history of pass rush, right? And we're going to talk about free agency, and we're going to talk about the draft, right? Because it doesn't matter. The Falcons cannot get lucky either way, right? If they do it in the free agency, they unsuccessful. When they win in the draft, they've been unsuccessful, right? So we're looking at free agency, and I'm going to call out some names, guys, and a lot of you guys probably like, who is those guys? I have never heard of them before. Some of these guys you have, but so we're going back to 2011, right? 2011, you got Ray Edwards. Ray Edwards was a flop. It's just that simple. Ray Edwards, 2011, got him out of the free agency. Atlanta Falcons thought he was going to be able to do something. He did not do anything. He did not do anything, right? We had got rid of John Abraham, brought Ray Edwards in. We thought he was going to be a big time player for us, but he was not. It was a bust, right? 2013, the Atlanta Falcons tried it again. O.C. Umenyiora, right? He was okay, but he was not what we thought he was going to be coming from the Giants. O.C. Umenyiora, he did not pan out. He was not good for us, right? right? Dan Quinn comes in. He go get some of his buddies. He go get Brooks Reed, right? Brooks Reed, nope, didn't work, right? He was a good run defender, did not produce the sack numbers that we wanted to see, and it just did not pan out. When I got O'Brien Schofield, another guy, um, Dan Quinn ties, right? Did not pan out, didn't work out for us. No, it did not work. Adrian Claiborne, I know you guys remember Adrian Claiborne. Adrian Claiborne came in solid. He was solid. He was better. He was better pass rusher than most from free agency, right? I still recall he had that 6 sack game against Dallas Cowboys, and he just baptized that tackle they had over there, and it was ridiculous because they never put a guy over there to chip him to help the tackle out, and Dak Prescott got sacked like 6 times that game. And I know you guys remember Agent Claiborne. That was um, a great season for us for sacks. So, like I said, we had some spots, right? They brought in Dwight Freeney. Dwight Freeney was amazing. Probably going to be a Hall of Famer. But he was past his prime. He came in, but I thought he was real helpful for the Atlanta Falcons. Remember, Dwight Freeney came in, Atlanta Falcons went to the Super Bowl. So I'm not upset about with the Dwight Freeney, but once again, it wasn't a long term deal. It was something that came in, and he was real helpful. He was impactful, right? He helped out our young defensive linemen we had. So I did like bringing in a guy like the Dwight Freeney, sort of like what they tried to do last year with Calais Campbell, right? But once again, it was not a long term fix. They went out and got Jack Crawford, guys. I know you guys remember him. Did not pan out as well, right? So think about it. That's since 2011. These are the free agents that Atlanta Falcons tried to go get, and I'm going to get to today as well, to 2024, right? They went out and got Dante Fowler, right? Remember that as well. Brought in Dante Fowler, a guy who was a top 5 pick. Went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, worked with Dan Quinn in college. Dan Quinn caught him. Actually, I think he probably had a better year this year, right? Because he was on that top 20 I just called out as edge rushers. But we remember how Dante Fowler, fared in the Atlanta Falcons uniform. It was not that successful at all, right? You come up to this guy, you go get guys like a Bud Dupree. They tried to get Calais Campbell. His name was on that top 20, right? Maybe they should have brought Calais Campbell back this year. Maybe that would have helped out a lot, right? Um, and then you look at Matthew Judon, the last guy we just brought in, right? Did not pan out. So from a free agency standpoint, and you go all the way back from the Thomas Demetra era, right, to the Terry Fontenot era, from a free agent standpoint, the Atlanta Falcons have not fared well when they're going out and trying to go get pass rushers. They have not fared well at all, right? It's just like it's a curse when it comes to pass rusher for the Atlanta Falcons, right? So from a free agent standpoint, now let's go to the draft, right? Some of these guys I haven't even heard of. I don't even remember these guys being drafted, right? Randy Gardner, Roman Flemings, Wayne Bacon, Demetri Ville, Chauncey Davis, Jamal Anderson, Corey Bierman, not bad, right? He was solid. Corey Bierman was solid. Lawrence Salisbury, Cliff Matthews, Jonathan Malachi Goodman, Stanley Baponga, Vic Beasley, right? Tack McKinley, John Kaminsky, Ade Ogundeji. And then you got Arnold Ebiketie, who's still on the roster, and Zach Harrison. Guys, those are the draftees over the years that Atlanta Falcons don't got. Now you got Corey Bierman, who had 23 and a half sacks his time that he was here. You had Big Beasley with 37 and a half sacks. Tat McKinley with 17 and a half sacks, right? Um, Armor Ebiketie, Zach Harrison, the jury's still out on both of those guys, right? So think about that, guys. From a free agency standpoint, the Atlanta Falcons struck out over the last 2 decades. From a draft standpoint, the Atlanta Falcons struck out over the last 2 decades. Now, when we thinking about the draft, right? Some of these guys that I just called out, that's on the top 20 from a edge rusher standpoint, some of those guys, Atlanta Falcons passed up on. You look at a guy like T.J. Watt, right? The Atlanta Falcons took Tech McKinley. T.J. Watt got picked after him. Yes, Michael Parsons. Michael Parsons, number 3 on this list. The Atlanta Falcons picked Kyle Pitts in the draft, right? Some of these guys we would never been able to got to. Some of these guys picked high, like a Myles Garrett, picked really high. Jadeveon Clowney, we know he was picked high. Nick Bosa, he was picked high. So some of these guys, the Atlanta Falcons did not have an opportunity. But a lot of these guys, the Atlanta Falcons, whoever in their scouting department, they need to let them go. And I know over the years they don't change it up, they don't switch it up. But for some reason, the Atlanta Falcons cannot signal in on this position. The draft is a crapshoot. I get it, hit or miss. You're doing on measurements, you're doing on traits and things like that. But the tape should help you be able to find. And the fact that over the last 2 decades, the Atlanta Falcons have not been able to crack it, it's really interesting to me. It just is. And that's why I really wanted to talk about it today. And I really wanted to get you guys' opinion on it, what you guys thought about it, and what you think the Atlanta Falcons should do moving forward when it's going to come to pass rush, right? Now, we all assume in this year's draft that Atlanta Falcons is going to go down this route somewhere in the draft, right? Now, look at last year, they went heavily on the line of scrimmage, right? Now, these guys got to develop. The jury's still out on these guys, so we don't know how these guys are going to pan out. I mean, even a guy like Zach Harrison still is young he's still in his first contract. Even Armor Ebiketie is still in his first contract. So the jury might be still out on these guys. So I'm not going to say that the Falcons have failed again. But so far, looking like a guy like Armor Ebiketie, he's going into his contract year. Right, this is a big year for him. Zach Harrison's going to a 3rd season. So, at some point in time, these guys got to start to develop correctly. Right now, Ruko Ororo, Brandon Darlis, Braylon Trice, those guys just got drafted. Right, we still don't know how much they're going to contribute. Could they be the guys that finally, end this curse for the Atlanta Falcons and starting to get out the quarterbacks? We're going to find out because these guys just started their NFL career. But for so long, the Atlanta Falcons have not been able to get it done, right? Last 2 decades, I just called out the names, all right? It's not one guy on there that when they left the Atlanta Falcons, went somewhere else and had a productive, career. So it wasn't because the Falcons draft, it was the team. Because, sometimes players go somewhere and, the situation they go to, it just wasn't a good situation. They go somewhere else and they start having success. This is not the case with the guys the Falcons drafted. Even when they left the Atlanta Falcons, they was either out the league or they went somewhere else. They still was unproductive, right? Or we got guys in free agency that had some semi-success where they're from and they came to the Falcons and they was duds. So the Atlanta Falcons just not had success, right? It's going to be really interesting to see what Atlanta Falcons be able to do this year. But you said John Abraham, he was the last one, right? And John Abraham was the last guy before they went and got Ray Edwards, right? They had John Abraham here. They brought in Ray Edwards, who was a complete bust. And from that point on, we had Vic Beasley. Like I said, we had Corey Beardman. We had Tad McKinley, who was probably more, had mental issues more than anything. You can see by his track record through the league where he can't stay with teams and things like that. So the Atlanta Falcons just have not been able to get it right. And to me, when we talk about one of the biggest issues for the Atlanta Falcons, this is what it boils down to, right? Um, if they fix this, the Atlanta Falcons can win the Super Bowl. I think from an offensive standpoint, and if you look at through the years, the Atlanta Falcons have really had some really good offenses. They just have, right? I mean, they have had some really, really good offenses. The defense is what's been holding this team back for years. It really has. Um, and it started in the trenches. We keep going back to that, harping to that, and they need to start to make some moves to let us know that they understand what the issue is, because to keep going down this drought, going on 30 years, it's almost like the Cowboys, not making to an NFC championship game in 30 years. The Atlanta Falcons can't get a pass rusher for the last 30 years, and it's holding us back. I mean, Atlanta Falcons been to 2 Super Bowls, right, since 1998, and both times, you know, we got beat because our defense was not good enough. It's just that simple. That Denver team in 1998, right? Of course they had TD. You know, they had a pretty good potent offense, and we want to go about Eugene Robinson and all that stuff. But we was not good enough in 1998. 2016, defense was just too young, ran 93 plays. Tom Brady just wore us down. That's what it boils down to. Dan Quinn was not ready. Now, Brady had a great game that Super Bowl. He had 3 sacks in that Super Bowl. I think a Super Bowl record still right now. So you gotta love, you know, the Atlanta Falcons able to get to the big dance, but they're not being able to seal the deal. And if we can get a defense, like I just go back, and we haven't revisionist history, right? Because I'm just talking the Philadelphia Eagles, what they was able to do to Patrick Mahomes, right? Who some say, one of the best quarterbacks a lot of people have ever seen, right? But when don't have time, to make his reads and make the plays that he need to make because he's running for their life. They rushing him, right? They speeding up his clock, all those things, right? That's where you see, if we can just do that, maybe we have opportunity to raise our banner up for the first time in Atlanta Falcons history, and that would be great. James said, "Fire the scouts." That's where I'm at by now, man. Like, I'm sure they don't had different scouts throughout the years and things like that. But it's something fundamentally, I think, with the Atlanta Falcons when it comes to being able to scout pass rushers. It's gotta be. It just has to be. It's no way that the Atlanta Falcons have struck out for the last 2 decades on pass rush where I just called out the names. They have acquired guys through free agency and through draft. And in each instance, they have not been successful of these guys being productive when they came to Atlanta Falcons. So it's interesting, and it's not any other position. It's those positions, right? You can go down the line and look at guys they have brought in the draft or acquired in free agency from any other position, and you were like, that was a good signing, right? But for some reason, the Atlanta Falcons have not been able to get this one position down. And it's not like the talent's not out there. Because like I said, they have passed up on guys, right? Why you couldn't see that guy, and put him up high on your board, and you would have had a generation of prayer. Like when we picked Kyle Pitts, I get it. Kyle Pitts was supposed to be the unicorn and things like that. But now you look at a guy like Michael Parsons who's picked in the same draft, you're like, man, what were we thinking, right? You look at a guy like TJ Watt and you pick Tat McKinley over him. Like, what were we thinking? It just you just don't understand it sometimes. And at this point, I don't know what to say. You say bad play calling by the offensive coordinator. Talking about, I guess you talking about the Super Bowl. Yeah, I'm sorry I brought up the Super Bowl, guys. Didn't really want to bring the Super Bowl up, but I'm sorry I brought that up. But yeah, but Atlanta Falcons got to be able to get it right eventually, and hopefully they do. Hopefully the Atlanta Falcons eventually will find a way to solve this issue. Now, there's a lot of more issues with this team. Just getting a pass rusher won't solve it all. Um, like James mentioned, we talked about the linebacker position. Linebackers got to be upgraded as well. I think, still need cornerbacks and things like that. So, but for me, when you just look at the history of this team and you look up the decades of ineptitude of not being able to get the pass rush right, it's like a joke. It's like a running joke now for the Lions. And I saw a stat over the last 10 years, the Atlanta Falcons probably been like 26 or worse in sacks. 26 or worse in sacks, man. You can't make that up. It the coaching can't be that bad. The coaching cannot be that bad, right? So it has to be your scouts who you're bringing in, as players. The scheme can't be that bad. The coaching can't be that bad. It's your personnel you're bringing in. And like I said, these guys are not leaving that Falcons and going somewhere else and having stellar careers. These guys are either going out the league, right? Or they going somewhere else and having the same production they had with Atlanta Falcons. So um it's just not working for you. So whatever you're doing, Terry Fontenot mentioned in his press conference, end of the season press conference, he mean that they need to look at everything. Well, this is one of the positions when they're scouting, they need to look at it differently, right? They need to hire somebody else to look at this position differently and specifically because we get one dominant pass rusher that when you pick him, you say that's what it's supposed to look like, and we haven't had that since John Abraham, and that's just really boils down to. So so I really want to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think about this. I'm up the barking up the wrong tree here, talking about the biggest issue is our pass rush. Um, like I said, I just went over the history, of what they did in free agency, what they was able to do in the draft, and either way you slice it, they have not been. So it's not the fact that Atlanta Falcons haven't attempted to fix the pass rush. It's that they just can't get it done, and for some reason they keep picking the wrong guy or the wrong guys. Right? We was all excited about Matthew Judah coming in. Right? A guy who played 4 games the season before, tore his pec, but 4 sacks in 4 games. I don't even know if he had 4 sacks all season for us, and he played the entire season. Like that's that's sad, right? And we thought he was going to push us over the top when we brought him in, but he couldn't get it done, right? Um, it's just for some reason Atlanta Falcons cannot get the pass rush right, and until they do, we always going to be sitting here every year, every draft, and be like, they're going to get a pass rush, they're going to get a pass rusher, and at this point, picking at 15, right? I'm like, the pass rush, the pass rush that they do get, will he make be a difference maker? I'm not sure. So now we got to go back to the well in free agency maybe and try to get a pass rush in free agency. But then are you going to get a guy who's over the hill like a Dwight Freeney we brought him in, or you can get a marginal guy like a Adrian Claiborne like when we brought him in? Um, Those guys was good for us, right? You get a Dwight Freeney or Calais Campbell, guys that's past their prime that can come in and teach the young guys. Both of those guys, I thought, brought value to the team. You know, they brought both of those guys. Of course, with Dwight Freeney, the Atlanta Falcons went to the Super Bowl that year. Calais Campbell, I thought he brought a lot to the table to help Zach Harrison grow. So, you know, bringing veterans in. So a guy like Khalil Mack, I know he's out there. Maybe that could be the answer. Bring him in. We don't want him to be the guy that's was dominant in his heyday, but he come in and help these guys develop. The Atlanta Falcons have put a lot of capital in investments in their defensive line last year. So those guys have the last 2 years, matter of fact, right? You get guys like Armor Ebiketie, you look at Zach Harrison, you look at Brandon Dorless, you look at Rook Roro, you look at Braylon Trice. That's 5 guys that have invested in. Those guys got to develop, right? So instead of looking at the Atlanta Falcons, you know, making these splash, right? We got to see, can these guys that they already invested in start to pan out. And that's what we got to do. So I don't know who they're going to draft at 15. Are they going to push back? Move back in the draft and get more draft capital for you can double up and double down on pass rushers or the trenches again, right? I can tell you this draft in particular is really, really heavy on defensive linemen. So it is feasible to get 2 impact players, in this draft in the trenches for the Atlanta Falcons because it's so deep. Like I said, I heard one scout said it's like they had like 24 guys on the defensive line in the first round with first round grades. So if that's the case, Atlanta Falcons definitely can get a guy in the first round and maybe even in the second round that could be impact players. So, but they got to start developing guys. You build around the edges in free agency. Atlanta Falcons have to do that anyway because of their cap situation. But you have to start building the draft. They invested in the defensive line the last 2 seasons in the draft. It's about time for those guys to start paying dividends because if not, we're gonna be back adding these guys to the list I just called out earlier of guys that didn't pan out. Armor Ebiketie, he's on the clock. He's in his contract year. Zach Harrison, 1 more year, he'll be in his contract year, right? Rook Roro, Brandon Dorless, Braylon Trice. You guys need that year 1 to year 2 jump to make this team be more competitive. That's what it boils down to. That's how Atlanta Falcons can stay relevant, right? Some of these draft kits got to start to pan out, and if they don't, we're gonna have to add them to our list. And then we'll be talking about another decade from now. The Atlanta Falcons still have not figured out their pass rush. So we got 3 Dirty says, what's up, Racondo? The formula has to match the personnel. So our scouts and our coaches working together in order. That's a great question, man. I'm not sure. That's a great question. You got to think about Dan Quinn, right? So I'm gonna just go back to the 2015 season with Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitrov, right? And Dan Quinn wanted to try to replicate the Legion of Boom, right? That's what he wanted to do. So he had an architect, a guy that he wanted, he wanted a defensive lineman that was going to shoot the gap, right? You wanted to try to create those guys that you had in Seattle and bring them to Atlanta, right? But to your point, you only could work with the personnel that you got. So you have to sometimes you have to make your scheme fit the players that you have, right? Because you can't get rid of everybody. You can't replace everybody. And if you make investment in the guys, you got to be able to deal with it. Now, the Dan Quinn, we know for a fact that Dan Quinn had the final say on the roster, right? That was the deal he had with Arthur Blank, right? So those were his guys. Those were his guys. They just was not good guys, right? We know he picked Takk McKinley, right, instead of TJ Watt. We know that. So that's a great question. It has to work though. You're 100% right. They got to work hand in hand, right? You look at, for an example, the Philadelphia Eagles, right? The Philadelphia Eagles, when they first started the season off, their defense wasn't as good as it was starts to end, right? Big Fan Joe had to come in and he had to figure it out. He had to figure out his guys, and then by the end of the season, he was able to put a game plan together against Patrick Mahomes where they didn't even blitz. They got home with their front four, and they understood the scheme so well, and they was playing really, really good football toward the end of the season, right? That's what we need to see. We need to get our guys that we have, and I'm saying this now because when I think about it, the investment the Atlanta Falcons have made on the in the trenches is more than people want to admit, right? Like I said, in the last 2 seasons, um, they have really invested, not just in free agency and draft alone. Um, they have really invested in the trenches, and these guys got to start panning out, man. Remember Ebiketie, he had to have a breakout season this year. Zach Harrison need to be able to do it, right? You look at a guy like Taquan Graham, he's a free agent now, right? Never panned out. No, he took an injury one season, but never panned out. Ade Okundeji was a guy that was drafted, never panned out, got cut last year. So, we already seeing some guys falling off to the wayside. At some point in time, these guys got to start paying off the investment, or we're gonna have a new regime in here because it's not working. That's where it boils down to. But you are exactly right about the coaching and the scouts working hand in hand, trying to make something special. And right now, that's not what we're seeing. T. Terry said we got to go young and drop all those old players. And you know what? I, that's what I'm. I hate to say it, man, because I love Grady, right? And like I said, if they could bring Grady back on a team friendly deal, that would be great. But that $16 million, we could utilize that. So it depends on the direction of this team. You're right. The investments have been made. I mean, in essence, I think they drafted Grady replacement last year when Rook Aurora. Will he live up to that? I'm not sure. But you're right. They have to go young, man. Look at what the Rams did, right? Look what the Rams did. They Hall of Famer retired and they went young completely, right? The question is, do Raheem Morris, can he afford to do that? What he did with the Rams, go young and build these young guys up, or do he have to try to win now? Because is he already on the hot seat? That's the question. We know Terry Fontenot, he's really on thin ice, right? He's going into his fifth season now as being the general manager, and still have not had a winning season. So he's really teetering right now. And I don't know how big of a leash Raheem Morris got. So going young is the way I see it because the investment they have made, but at some point they got to be able to do something. Get some talent, then coach them up. That's what they got to do. They're gonna have to coach these guys up because at this point in time, see, it's not like the first season in 2021 when Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot got here and they got a lot of guys that was on minimum contracts, right? So they had to build a team because remember that was a COVID year, the cap went down, so they had to make tough decisions. They got a lot of guys from bargain basement deals, a lot of veteran minimum deals and things like that. This is different. They actually invested in these guys that they got, and we need to see those guys start to pay dividends. That's what it boils down to. So, maybe they have to make tough decisions, go young, and see what happens. You say T. Terry, the Rams went younger. The Eagles did as well. Look at the Eagles defensive front. They're young. They're young, man. Um, that Broncos defense is young. Look at that front. Look at that. Look at that. The trenches the Broncos had. How those guys got after us. Got after people as well. It's a couple of teams that really did it right, and the Atlanta Falcons got to go ahead and make a decision. Yes, it's going to be tough decisions to make. Um, Honestly, I don't know. I can't see them keeping David and Grady. They need to go young. So I'm tracking whatever you guys saying. Um, Even maybe find a defensive tackle in this draft, right? Because it'll be way less money than what you owe David Amiata, way less money than what you owe Grady Jarrett. So you go defensive tackle in this draft, and then you be young across the board. It's gonna be some growing pains, but in time, those guys gonna develop, and you can start to pay some of your offensive talent that you got, right? Because you want to keep those guys together. You want to keep Drake. You want to keep Bijan. Um, you want to keep those guys together. So you're gonna have to start going young. It's how you build a team. Like I said, they gotta make tough decisions this season. I can't wait to see how it all pans out. But going young is probably the best way to go. And seeing here, that's what it's all about. Therapy with you guys on this chat today. I'm starting to see more clear, and I think that's the direction the Atlanta Falcons need to go. Right? They don't need to go out and go get some old free agent pass rusher. Don't even invest in an old pass rusher, Khalil Mack, who's 32, something like that. Don't even do that. You go get back in free agency. They need to invest in linebackers and cornerbacks. Right? Go young in the draft and let's roll. I agree with you 100%. That's the way they should go. Um, It'd be interesting to see what they decide to do because I mean, if you put that much stock into your draft picks that you had, and hoping these guys eventually, especially guys that you picked early, like a Rooker Warrior in the second round, right? Armor Ebiketie, you picked in the second round. Zach Harrison, you picked in the third round. These guys supposed to be starting to contribute now, right? And then you can get younger that way. Because if you got to continue going to get older guys to make your team better, right? Your development plan sucks, and you're just wasting draft picks because these guys still ain't getting an opportunity to start, right? You just adding guys on top of it. So it'll be interesting to see what these guys got to do. That's why they got rid of their defensive line coach, right? Maybe they bring in another defensive line coach. He can coach these guys up to be better and start to pay dividends, right? That's what we need to see. Trust me, Grady Jarrett, when he first got here, he wasn't Grady Jarrett yet, right? He had to develop, and that's how he turned to who he is today. So we got to give Zach Harrison, we got to give Rook Roro, we got to give Brandon Dorless actually a chance to get on the field, who really didn't have the opportunity last year, right? I'm really interested to see about what Braylon Trice can bring to the table. We never got to see that this season. So um those those four guys right there are all young. Let's see what they can bring to the table. You said maybe that new defensive line out of Houston will help the guys out in front. Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's There you go. What's going on, Lewis? What's going on? What's going on? Hey guys, I can tell you this much. You actually having this conversation with you guys today actually have shine some light. I like it. I like it a lot. I love the idea of going young, right? I think it'll be a lot of growing pains for Atlanta Falcons, but when you look at it from a big picture, and now I'm looking past 2025. Um, these guys got to get better because you invested into these guys, you drafted these guys, to be a contributor to the team. Now, I do believe you need some veteran mixed in with the youth, right? I do believe that, but that's why I say keep one of those guys and David and Grady, right, to mix it in a little bit. But these guys got to start to bring you dividends or your draft capital that you had, right? Because that's how you build a competitor for years to come. Because some of your young talent and your draft, right, start to pan out, right? So we have to go out and get a pass rusher. We got to go out and get a veteran linebacker. We got to go out and get a veteran cornerback, right? Your young talent ain't developing because the guys that you brought in free agency just pushing them down the depth chart and they never getting on the field to get better, right? So that's what I'm saying. So at some point, you got to look at a guy and be like, you the guy, right? And he gonna even sink or swim. And now you know though, right? Because you got to find out. I mean, it's a shame that D'Angelo Malone first got hit first just got his first opportunity this year, and he was really productive in a lot of games, right? But we never get to see it because he was playing behind so many guys, and he could never get on the field, right? So that's the point I'm making. You know, that Harrison needs to start, right? Luke Roro needs to start. You know, Brandon Darlis needs to be in the rotation so he can actually start to get some playing time, right? So it's gonna be interesting to see what these guys do. So I really like where you guys going with that by going younger. Going younger. But guys, there you have it. Ricondo's Falcons' biggest issue is the pass rush. But it's always been the pass rush. It's not just 2024 season. If you can go all the way back 2 decades, right? The last good pass rush Atlanta Falcon had was John Abraham. Then they started the trend with guys like Ray Edwards, right? And they could never get it right in free agency and in draft. So, guys, let me know what you think about the Atlanta Falcons' biggest issue. Do you agree that it's the pass rush? What direction they need to go? Do they need to change their scouting department, right? Or do, like I said, they need to go young again in this draft and start to develop guys and see can they get better. Some guys have did a blueprint around this league. Maybe the Atlanta Falcons need to start to follow that blueprint. And there you have it. So guys, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Please put your comments down so I can get back with you later. And this is your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. Peace.